All right, let's dive right into a really high-stakes legal drama. This is a story that pits artistic freedom directly against personal legacy. And at the very center of it all is the late actor Sushant Singh Rajput. It brings up a question that really challenges how we tell stories about people after they're gone.
So this is the big question, right? This is what our whole explainer is about. When a public figure passes away, who gets to be the gatekeeper of their story? Is it the filmmakers who see a public narrative worth telling, or is it the family trying to guard a private legacy? It's a clash that really makes us think about what rights, if any, a person still has after death.
So the whole legal fight kicked off even before the movie came out. Sushant Singh Rajput's father filed something called a qui timet action, which is basically a fancy legal term for a lawsuit trying to stop a potential harm before it happens. That first attempt to block the film got dismissed. But then, after the movie, Nyay, the justice, dropped online, an appeals court said, okay, now that we can actually see the film, you can try again. So the father filed a new plea, this time arguing the movie was defamatory.
Okay, before we can really get into the court's final decision, we have to get on the same page about the legal ideas that are at the very heart of this. We're talking about a bundle of concepts that people often just call celebrity rights. So let's break them down.
First up is the right to privacy. Now, in India, this is a huge deal. It's seen as a fundamental right. At its core, it's a pretty simple idea. Every person has the right to be left alone, to be free from people unlawfully digging into their personal life.
Next, we've got the right of publicity. The easiest way to think about this one is to imagine your own personal brand. It's your right to control how your name, your face, your whole identity gets used for business. A celebrity can license their image for an ad, for instance, and stop others from just cashing in on their fame without permission. And finally, there are personality rights. This is kind of the big umbrella that both privacy and publicity fit under. It's this broader idea that a person's public image, their reputation, everything they've built, well, it's all an extension of their personality, and that has real legal value.
And this isn't some newfangled idea. The modern concept of a right to privacy was famously and very simply summed up way back in 1890 in a huge Harvard Law Review article. It was just called the right to be let alone. And that simple phrase still shapes legal thinking all over the world today.
So with those key concepts in our back pocket, let's step inside the courtroom. The judge now had to actually sit down, watch the movie, and figure out how it stacked up against these fundamental rights.
Now, the filmmakers tried to argue that their movie was just, a fictional story about struggling actors that was maybe inspired by stuff in the news. The court, well, they didn't buy it for a second. After watching the film, the judge concluded that it was, for all practical purposes, a direct retelling of Sushant Singh Rajput's life, as it was all over the media.
But the filmmakers had an ace up their sleeve, right? They pointed to that disclaimer at the beginning of the movie. You know the one, this is a work of fiction, any resemblance is coincidental. Surely that would protect them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, not so much. Justice C. Harishankar came back with this incredibly sharp line. He said a disclaimer that is plainly untrue when you actually watch the movie is basically worthless. He said it's worth tinsel. I mean, what a burn. It was pretty much seen as an attempt to fool the court. Now, the court wasn't just making the stuff up. It was looking at several really important past cases. For example, a case called R. Rajagopal had already established that once something is part of the public record, like in news reports, your right to privacy about it kind of fades away. And, this is critical, the Deepa Jayakumar case had already ruled that the right to privacy dies with the person. It's not something you can pass down in a will. And all of this brings us to the main event, the climax of the case, the final verdict. What did the court actually decide about whether a family can inherit and protect the rights of someone who has passed away? The court's ruling really boiled down to a few core ideas. It made it clear that if someone's rights are violated, the solution isn't to stop a film from being published, it's to sue for damages after it comes out. And crucially, since this movie was based on news reports that were already out there, it couldn't be called an invasion of privacy.
So here it is. This is the absolute heart of the judgment. The court stated, in no uncertain terms, that all those rights we just talked about, privacy, publicity, and personality, they're personal. They aren't property. They are not heritable. They simply vanish the moment a person dies.
The judge also made this other really fascinating point about the whole idea of celebrity rights. He basically said that in India's constitutional system, which promises equality for all, there's just no room for an extra bundle of rights that only famous people get. Celebrities have personality rights, sure, just like everybody else, but they don't get anything extra.
So the impact of this ruling goes way beyond just this one film or this one family. It sets a massive precedent, and it's going to create a ripple effect for artists, for filmmakers, and for journalists all across India.
You see, this is the central tension of the whole thing. On one side, you have the filmmaker's constitutional right to freedom of expression, and on the other, you have the desire to protect a person's reputation after they're gone. The court ultimately came down on the side of free expression, saying that you don't need to get prior consent for stories that are based on public information. The family's option, it decided, isn't censorship. It's a potential lawsuit for damages later on.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, this judgment is a really significant win for freedom of expression in India. It basically opens the door for filmmakers, for biographers, for journalists to create works about public figures based on what's already in the public domain without that constant fear of being shut down by a lawsuit from the family before they even start.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty challenging question. While the law might be a bit clearer now, the ethical debate, that's far from over. This case really forces all of us to think about it. In telling the story of a life, where should we draw that line between a story that belongs to the public and a legacy that belongs to a family?